Why do you keep seeing repeating numbers on the clock? Have you ever noticed that there are only two possibilities when you look at the clock and see 11:11 for the 10th time this week? The first possibility is that you simply have a supernatural talent for checking your phone at exactly the same time, which, let's be honest, would be a completely useless skill. You can't exactly put it on your resume. Skills: intermediate Excel, fluent English, and a paranormal ability to spot 2222. The second possibility, well, that's the one nobody can stop thinking about once they start noticing these sequences. Because the strangest part isn't seeing repeating numbers once. The strange part is when you start seeing them everywhere. On your car dashboard, on the microwave, on the television, on your computer screen. And before you know it, your brain starts asking that dangerous question: what if this isn't a coincidence? Today, we're diving into the fascinating, controversial, and sometimes unsettling world of repeating numbers on the clock. What does numerology say? What does spirituality believe? And why do millions of people around the world swear that these experiences completely change their lives? Get ready, because some of the answers may be very different from what you expect. Let's start with an interesting fact. Almost everyone has seen repeating numbers: 1111, 2222, 1212, 303. But there's an intriguing detail: not everyone becomes obsessed with them. It's like when you buy a red car and suddenly it seems like half the city decided to buy the exact same model. The cars were always there. Your brain just started paying attention. In psychology, this has a sophisticated name: the frequency illusion, also known as the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. But wait, if the explanation were purely psychological, why have so many ancient spiritual traditions assigned deep meanings to numerical repetitions? The ancient Pythagoreans believed that numbers were the secret language of the universe itself. To them, numbers weren't just tools for counting money or calculating overdue bills. They represented invisible forces, patterns, and energies. And this is where things start to get interesting. Because according to various esoteric traditions, when you begin noticing repeating numbers constantly, you may be tuning into something much greater than you realize. Or maybe you're simply developing an unhealthy obsession with digital clocks. Both possibilities remain open. Let's talk about the absolute celebrity of repeating numbers, the famous 1111. If repeating numbers were a rock band, 1111 would be the egotistical lead singer monopolizing all the attention. And there's a reason for that. In numerology, the number 11 is considered a master number. It symbolizes intuition, spiritual awakening, expanded consciousness, and the connection between the physical and spiritual worlds. Translated into everyday language, the universe may supposedly be trying to get your attention, but trying to get your attention for what? Some believe that 1111 appears during periods of transition, when we're about to make important decisions or enter a new phase of life. And here's the interesting part. Many people report beginning to see 1111 during emotional crises, career changes, breakups, or moments of deep existential reflection. Coincidence? Maybe. But it's also true that we humans have an incredible ability to search for meaning in absolutely everything, including that "hey" text message sent by your ex at 3 in the morning. Let's explore some of the most talked about repeating numbers. Represents endings and new beginnings. It's like pressing the reset button on the video game of your life. Associated with independence, initiative, and fresh starts. The universe may be saying, stop waiting for permission to live your own life. 202. Connected to relationships and partnerships. It can also serve as a reminder to seek emotional balance. 303. Traditionally associated with creativity, communication, and self-expression. 404. One of the most intriguing sequences. Many esoteric traditions believe it symbolizes spiritual protection and stability. 505. Change, transformation, unexpected twists and turns. Basically, the spiritual equivalent of receiving a phone call that begins with, "We need to talk." 1111. Spiritual awakening and energetic alignment. 2222. The number of the builders. It represents manifestation, achievement, and turning goals into reality. 2323. Associated with the closing of cycles in preparation for major changes. Of course, there are countless different interpretations depending on which tradition you consult. Because let's face it, if there's one thing the spiritual universe seems to have in common with the modern internet, it's that everyone has a different opinion. Now let's bring a little rationality into this conversation. Science suggests that our brains are highly specialized pattern recognition machines. This ability was essential for our survival. Our ancestors who recognized patterns could identify dangers, predict behaviors, and stay alive longer. The problem is that our brains became so good at this that they started finding patterns even where they may not actually exist. This phenomenon is called apophenia. It's the same reason we see faces in clouds, figures in random stains, and believe that the song playing on the radio was somehow a sign from destiny. But this raises an interesting question. If the experience leads to reflection, self-awareness, and positive change, does it really matter whether its origin is spiritual or psychological? Perhaps the real question isn't whether the universe is trying to speak to you. Perhaps the question is, why did you start listening right now?
There's something fascinating about repeating numbers that is rarely discussed.
Regardless of which explanation you choose, spiritual, psychological, or symbolic, they all share one powerful characteristic. They interrupt our automatic routines. You're living your life normally, answering messages, paying bills, thinking about the past, feeling anxious about the future. Then suddenly you look at the clock and see 2222. For a few seconds you stop. You think, you observe, you reflect. And perhaps that's the true power of repeating numbers, not necessarily to predict the future, not necessarily to deliver secret messages from the universe, but to remind you of something we constantly forget, that we're alive, that we're conscious, and that perhaps we need to pay closer attention to the direction we're giving our own existence. So the next time you look at the clock and once again find those repeating numbers, ask less, what is the universe trying to tell me? And ask more, what have I been trying to tell myself for so long? Because sometimes the greatest mystery isn't in the numbers, it's within us. And perhaps that's exactly why we keep looking at the clock.